Hello, here are a few items that I use in my kitchen religiously. First, let's start with my chef's knife. I chose the Mercer Renaissance 8-inch chef knife. The reason I chose this knife is because it's very inexpensive. I believe I got it for like $35, no more than $40. And also it uses similar steel to more expensive brands like Wusthof. So I assumed worst case scenario, it's just a cheap replica. But honestly, I've been using it for a few months now, and it's pretty damn good. I also decided to pick up a Nakiri, which is a vegetable knife. It's supposed to be like a Japanese style vegetable knife, but this one's by Mercer, and Mercer is not a Japanese brand. So the blade is a little bit thicker than I believe it's supposed to be, but honestly, it's still a very good knife. This is the 7-inch Nakiri under their Genesis line. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I like this line of knives more than the Renaissance. It's really just because I have bigger hands and the handle feels more substantial in my hands than the Renaissance line does. So if you are going to pick up a Mercer knife, I'd probably suggest picking up something from the Genesis line because it does have a little bit more weight to it as far as like the handle. Next is a bench scraper. I basically use this to kind of save my knife. So after I chopped up some onions and I want to scoop them up and put them into a bowl, I'll use this instead of using my knife because you don't really want to do that. It's not really very good for the blade and it'll really dull out your knife pretty quick. So I do recommend picking one up if you don't have one because it's only like $6 and it's well worth it. Alright, so I also use a meat thermometer fairly often. It's just a good way to kind of be, how would I say this, scientific whenever you're cooking a steak or a chicken or whatever. Just make sure that you're not overcooking it, because one thing with chicken is if you don't have a good eye for knowing when it's done, you can very much dry out your chicken very quickly because you're way past 170. I wouldn't recommend picking this one up. It was fairly cheap. I believe it was $14. But now that I've used it, I'm not really fond of it. I'm thinking about picking up a more expensive one just because of how slow this one is. I believe I'm going to be picking up a Thermometer. And if you don't know what that is, it's just a very, very nice meat thermometer. It's about $70 though. And last but certainly not least, we have the Debuyer Mineral Pro B 12.5 inches. This is a carbon steel pan. It's honestly been a workhorse for me. I'm so glad that I picked it up. Really, the reason I went with carbon steel instead of cast iron is just because honestly it looks prettier, if I must be transparent. And it's supposed to be a little bit lighter, but with the Debuyer Mineral Pro B, you kind of can't necessarily say that because the Debuyer Mineral Pro B is a much thicker carbon steel pan. The advantage of carbon steel over cast iron has always been that carbon steel has similar properties to cast iron, but it's a lot lighter. The reason I went with this one instead of, let's say, a lighter carbon steel pan is really just because with my electric stovetop, I'm very, very likely to bow any thin pan that I use. If you go through my pot collection, you'll see that every single pot and pan in there is bowed and warped. So with the thicker pan, it's very hard to warp. So that's why I went with the Debuyer Mineral Pro B. And honestly, I'm so happy that I did. It's an amazing pan, well worth the money. It is very expensive though, and I should have a link down below if you do want to pick one up. It is an affiliate link, so help your boy out. But that wraps this up. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys do have any more questions, please let me know in the comments or hit me up on TikTok or Instagram. Peace.